Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Natea and this is Nesthetics, where I talk about topics that I care about and you should care about too if you choose. Today I am talking about the Supreme Court of the United States v. Black America by talking about the recent rulings that shut down affirmative action and also shut down the student loan forgiveness program. So I know that these rulings of course affect other groups as well, but today I'm going to be strictly talking about how these rulings will disproportionately affect Black Americans and arguably affect Black Americans the most. To me, these rulings translate that Black Americans are undeserving of reparations, because to me, if affirmative action and student loan forgiveness were used in ways to really favor Black Americans and really help Black Americans, these could be forms or small forms of reparations. And I'm going to explain more by what I mean by this by talking about each case separately and talking about the history of affirmative action and student loan debt forgiveness as it applies to African Americans. So starting with affirmative action, I'm going to start by breaking down the case a little bit. And side note, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice / pre-law. And originally I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, but decided against it. But I took a lot of constitutional law classes, and just looking at this case, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get in my pre-law bag just a little bit for the next few minutes. So first I want to start off by answering a few questions. What is affirmative action? What was its purpose? When was it enacted? And who did it actually benefit? So starting with what is affirmative action? Affirmative action refers to any set of policies in place to ensure equal opportunity and prevent discrimination based on a broad range of identities, including race, sex, gender, religion, national origin, and disability. Originally introduced on a large scale in the 1960s to address racial discrimination, affirmative action policies typically appear in employment and education contexts. Affirmative action was enacted in the United States in September 1965 when then President Lyndon B. Johnson issued an executive order which prohibited employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, and national origin by organizations that received federal contracts and subcontracts. But it was a 2003 decision by the Supreme Court that established a national precedent, allowing schools to consider race when making admissions decisions. Now, this is the problem that I have with affirmative action and other laws like this. So affirmative action originally was supposed to be used to address racial discrimination, but eventually, other groups of people like religion and gender and disability, etc., were also included in affirmative action, which is great, and I fully support that. The thing that I have a problem with is that anytime Black Americans strive for a law or something to uplift our community and to undo the racist wrongs that America has done to us, we never get a law that is doing that for us. Like, it's supposed to do that for us, but it actually doesn't do that for us. So example with affirmative action actually didn't even benefit Black people the most. It benefited white women the most, because of the other groups of people that are, included in affirmative action, like I said, which is great. I just don't like how every time Black Americans, we try to get some type of reparations or we try to get something done or in place that will remedy the racist wrongs that were done to us, those things never actually end up helping us. For real. So now present day for the Supreme Court case, Students for Fair Admissions v. Harvard, they argued that affirmative action violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and that it also violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And here we go again, where a law, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that was put in place to, get rid of Jim Crow, and it also allowed Black people to not be segregated in public places anymore. In this case, they're arguing that affirmative action violates the Civil Rights Act. So you see how laws that are used to benefit Black Americans, they are sometimes used against us or try to be used against us, or they're not used in our favor. And even though in this case, the Supreme Court ruled that affirmative action violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, it didn't say that it violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But to me, it's like, y'all still argued that affirmative action violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And it's like, I just hate that that was even an argument. I just hate that this is even an argument in a case to begin with. So now let's talk about the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So saying that affirmative action violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment is contradictory, because we know that Black Americans were never given life, liberty, and property even to this day. Like, we know that these laws were never meant for Black Americans. Affirmative action was supposed to be one way that gave Black Americans equal protection and equal opportunity to employment and education, yet this case in this ruling is saying that affirmative action violates the equal protection law because everyone isn't protected. But at the same time, everyone still isn't protected. Black Americans still are not protected. Even present day, Black Americans don't even have the full immunity and privileges of an American person. And sometimes Black Americans are even treated as second-class citizens and not like we're actually Americans when we even asked to be over here. So it's like, how you gonna say affirmative action violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment when Black people aren't even protected by the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment in the first place? And in the dissenting opinions of some of the Supreme Court justices, such as Justice Sonia Sotomayor and also Justice Ketanji Jackson, they echoed my same sentiments. Today, the court overrules decades of precedent and imposes a superficial rule of race blindness on the nation. The majority's vision of race neutrality will entrench racial segregation in higher education because racial inequality will persist so long as it is ignored. Similarly, Justice Jackson dissented, it would be deeply unfortunate if the Equal Protection Clause actually demanded this perverse, ahistorical, and counterproductive outcome, to impose this result in that clause's name when it requires no such thing, and to thereby obstruct our collective progress towards the full realization of the clause's promise is truly a tragedy for us all. We all know that in America, they find loopholes in the law. They find new ways to skin a cat and new ways to reinvent the wheel when it comes to racism and figuring out ways to be racist. And this court ruling is just another example of that. We also cannot forget how Black Americans historically have been prohibited from learning how to read and write, and also being prohibited from intellectual activity in general. During slavery, literacy was literally gatekept from Black Americans, and they were not allowed to read or write, or they would be subjected to punishment or death. And there were also anti-literacy laws in the South that prohibited Black Americans from reading or writing, or anyone teaching them how to read or write. It was illegal. Black Americans couldn't even go around with a book in their hand or under their arm without being punished. It's like, even if they didn't know how to read that book, you got a book on you, that's against the anti-literacy law. They didn't want enslaved Black people to be literate because they believed that that would give them more intelligence to go against the slave system. And it's just like that quote that Assata Shakur said, no one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. Nobody's going to teach you your true history, teach you your true heroes, if they know that that knowledge will help set you free. So before enslaved Black people were able to read and write, they were already intimidated by their intelligence, because they knew, like, if they're able to read and write, it's gonna be over. So it's like, they already knew how intelligent black people were, and they were intimidated, and they just did not want to see it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know any other group here in America besides black Americans who have been prohibited historically by law and otherwise from reading and writing and being literate. Like, I literally don't know any other group of people who have gone through that. So to me, this Supreme Court ruling, it goes deeper than just the surface level of, oh, this is just affirmative action. Like, no, this affects black people in higher education and who want to pursue higher education. Black Americans historically have been prohibited from intellectual activity and conscious raising activities such as reading and writing. So this Supreme Court ruling, to me at least, maybe because I'm a deep thinker, or maybe I'm thinking too much, but I don't think I am, it goes deeper than the surface level. And also, in addition, when we think about historically black colleges and universities and why they were created, why they were established because black Americans weren't allowed or weren't given the equal chance or fair admissions to go to predominantly white schools. So historically black colleges, or HBCUs, were created so that black people could get educated and pursue higher education. Some universities did not accept black people simply and solely because they were black. And you can even see this with Emory University in their medical school in 1959 with Marion Hood, who was rejected from their school. And literally in his letter, his rejection letter, it said they would not consider his application because he was black. So it's like college admissions, they have historically not accepted people because they were black. And this also speaks to how affirmative action will impact the health of black people, because there are already outrageous health disparities in the black community in America. Like, the black maternal health rate is outrageous. Like, there should not be this many black women dying during pregnancy. Like, it's just unacceptable. And it actually makes me not want to have kids, like, for real. There already aren't a lot of black healthcare professionals, and black people already don't receive the empathetic care that they need. And I can even relate to this because I've had like a health issue that I've had going on for the past 2 years that came up very randomly and out of nowhere. I went to several doctors, all of them non-black, didn't know what was going on with me. And one of the doctors tried to get me to take a medication that was gonna make my eyesight worse. I'm like, sis, you trying to make me go blind? Like, no, I'm not about to take this medication. And it wasn't until I went to a black physician that I actually started receiving solutions to what my health issue was. I still to this day don't know exactly what my health issue is. It's still a problem, but it wasn't until I went to a black physician that I started getting some solutions. So we need black healthcare professionals, and I know that systemically, you know, the healthcare profession and in general our institutions in America are anti-black. So that's not going to change that. More black healthcare professionals is not going to change the anti-blackness of the healthcare profession, but it will at least help, because I don't know what I would be doing right now if I did not get to see that black physician, because all these other non-black physicians was not doing it for me, not at all. Also, a black woman doctor named Dr. Uche Blackstock, she shared her sentiments about this as well, which echo my same sentiments. The Supreme Court's decision to strike down affirmative action, including in professional schools like medical and nursing, will have detrimental consequences on black health for generations to come. This is about life and death for us. Today, we are only 5% physicians. For many of us, becoming health professionals is more than about individual success. We are more likely to practice in our communities. Our patients are more likely to feel seen, heard, and appreciated by us. Our presence in our communities is associated with better health. This decision will hasten the deaths of black people in this country, and we already die prematurely. So now moving on from affirmative action to the student loan debt forgiveness, program, and the Supreme Court also shutting that down, and how this will disproportionately affect Black Americans. So this program was supposed to erase, $10,000 to $20,000 of student loan debt for like people who made like under $125,000, something like that, and people with Pell Grants. So I want to run y'all some statistics when it comes to student loans and Black Americans. Black and African American college graduates owe an average of $25,000 more in student loan debt than white college graduates. 4 years after graduation, Black students owe an average of 188% more than white students borrowed. Black and African American student borrowers are the most likely to struggle financially due to student loan debt, making monthly payments of $250. Black and African American bachelor's degree holders have an average of $52,000 in student loan debt. Over 50% of Black student borrowers report their net worth is less than they owe in student loan debt. White college graduates have over 7 times the amount of wealth than Black college graduates. Black students are the most likely to receive federal loans and non-federal loans. And last but not least, student loan debt forgiveness would immediately increase the wealth of Black Americans by up to 40%. So based on that last statistic alone, that's why I said the student loan debt forgiveness program will be a small form of reparations. Because we know that there's a racial wealth gap in America between Black and white people. We also know that white people built their wealth for centuries off of slavery and off of the labor of Black people, and we know that that has contributed as to why the racial wealth gap is the way that it is now. And some people are like, Black people need to build their own selves up and pull their own selves up by their own bootstraps. But as Dr. King once said, like, how can you expect a bootless man to pull himself up by his own bootstraps? So this alone, if we actually had this student loan debt forgiveness program and it erased Black Americans' student loan debt, it would increase our wealth by 40%. And I really feel like the racial wealth gap is going to continue to stay where it is and be a gap or expand, because there's still racial inequality in America, and Black people working hard and getting education, higher education, is not going to decrease the racial wealth gap. And I can speak from experience on this as well, as a person with a master's degree and who also has a good paying job but also has 6 figures in student loan debt. So it's like, Black Americans, we go to college and get a higher education to push ourselves forward and make more income, but it's like we taking 2 steps back in the process, because for the next 10 years or less, I'm going to be paying off 6 figures in student loans. And if I didn't have that debt, I could have been using my income to build wealth. I mean, I still can, but majority or a lot of my income for the next 10 or less years is going to be going to paying off my debt. And the reason why I say 10 years or less is because I'm very dedicated to like undebting myself. Like, I know people, Black people who are in their 40s and 50s who still have student loan debt from their 20s, and I do not want to be like that. I want my debt gone. And if Joe Biden and whoever can't get rid of my student loan debt, then I'm gonna do it myself. And unfortunately, like, this is the reality for a lot of Black people who have pursued higher education. It's like, okay, yeah, I got this good job, making good money with my degree, but now I gotta pay off 6 figures in student loan debt. It's just, you would think that it would push us forward, but it's actually pushing us backwards. And that is why I say student loan debt forgiveness would be a form of reparation. And if you ask me, college should be free for all Black Americans. I know that's a radical idea, but I said what I said. And it's like this racial wealth gap wouldn't even exist if it wasn't because of the racist history of America. Like, black people are literally owed. Like, I don't care what nobody say. Black Americans are long overdue for reparations. And I believe we gonna get reparations one day. Okay? I think that I don't know what reparations is going to look like, and I think it could look many different ways. But black Americans long overdue for reparations, because white folks, literally, the wealth that a lot of these families have today is because of black people. It's because of y'all ancestors owning enslaved black people and how y'all built wealth off of that. So we deserving of our reparations and our student loan forgiveness based off of that. So as we can see, with both rulings, with affirmative action and with student loan forgiveness, they're going to disproportionately impact black Americans. And if these cases were done right, these could have been small forms of reparations for black people. And if these programs, I guess, were done right as well, they could have been small forms of reparations for black people, because, as I said earlier, affirmative action actually benefited white women the most. And honestly, these rulings were surprising for some, but they were not for me. And I want to say they were less surprising because of the book that I just started reading called Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And I work at a university, so I get free books sometimes, and this is one of the free books that I got recently and started reading. And one of the quotes that he said in the beginning of the book really just put things into perspective for me about racism, racial progress, and racist progress in America. So I want to leave y'all with a couple of those quotes from his book. I saw a dual and dwelling history of racial progress and the simultaneous progression of racism. I saw the anti-racist force of equality and the racist force of inequality marching forward, progressing in rhetoric and tactics and policies. If Barack Obama came to embody America's history of racial progress, then Donald Trump should come to embody America's history of racist progress. And racist progress has consistently followed racial progress. So basically, Ibram is saying that racial progress and racist progress will always coexist. Because some people ask, like, how could Donald Trump come after Barack Obama? And Ibram is saying that there's this duality and dwelling, that when there's racial progress, racist progress follows it. And then we just keep going. Racial progress, racist progress, racial progress, etc. So it's like, it's not surprising to me seeing this, because it's like people are like, oh, we're going backwards, and it's just like, it's this teeter-totter. It's like, oh, it seems like we're going forward, and we have moved forward, of course, over the last 50 years, but it's like there are things that make us feel like we're also going backwards. So racial progress and racist progress will continue to coexist and dwell together. And also just thinking about our legal system and the foundation it's built on. Our legal system is not a justice system, it's a legal system. And the lady justice who holds the balance scales and who's blindfolded, she's the one who represents our legal system, and she represents balance. Now, balance is not equality, and balance is not justice, and justice is not neutral, because balance is neutrality. And with Lady Justice having the blindfold over her eyes, to me that represents color blindness. So the Supreme Court justice and this legal system here in America, it's exactly reflecting its foundation it was built on and its values of balance. And I feel like what really represents this well is that illustration that shows the difference between equality, equity, liberation, and justice. And the Supreme Court and our legal justice system, they strive for equality, but it's not equity, and it's not justice, and it's not liberation. And black people are long overdue for our Black liberation. Those are all my thoughts for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and remember to always be respectful in the comment section. All the sources that I used and referred to in this video will be in the description box. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching this video and thank you for listening, and I will see y'all in my next one. Bye.